Let me tell you a story about an entire high school class fighting against an evil spirit. It was an unbelievable incident during my normal high school days. Our class, consisting of 36 students, was getting along well without any issues like bullying. However, everything changed when the class representative unexpectedly missed one day. It was the trigger for a series of events that would alter the fate of all 36 students in our class. It may sound like a made-up story, but it's a true account, though feel free to treat it as fiction if you wish. I'll include a bit of fake information for privacy protection, but the main events are real. Despite the title suggesting a battle, it was more of a one-sided struggle where we were mostly on the receiving end. Let me take my time to narrate since I haven't compiled the story. First, let me provide some background on me and two friends from that time. Me, second-year high school student, a shy member of a brass band. I was quite inconspicuous in class, not bullied, but felt a sense of being looked down upon. Hosoki, friend since middle school, also in the brass band, skinny but tall. Matsuzaka, close friend met in high school, the head of the science club. Not good-looking, but had surprisingly high specs in other aspects. Now, about the school we attended, it was a reasonably average high school in a somewhat rural area. Nothing extraordinary. Our class consisted of 36 students, and we had a decent bond as we had collaborated during the school festival before summer vacation. The incident began about a week after the summer vacation ended. It all started with the unexplained absence of our class representative. He was the vice captain of the boys' volleyball team and was well respected and sincere. Since there was no contact from him, our homeroom teacher found it odd. Rumors started circulating in the class, suggesting he might have had a traffic accident on his way to school. In the midst of this, one of the popular students from the cool group said something like,
"Hey, maybe he got cursed."
At that time, we all dismissed it as nonsense. However, this student claimed that they had performed some ritual similar to Kokuri-san, a Japanese spirit summoning game, with a few friends the previous night. Surprisingly, the class representative was also part of the group.
And then, after the ritual was over, he said he felt sick and just left. This is definitely a case of being possessed, right?
Although Hosoki, Matsuzaka, and I were not directly involved in the conversation, we overheard it and started discussing occult topics on an internet forum. During lunch break, the homeroom teacher called the class representative's house, but his parents claimed he had left for school as usual. Despite this, the whole class was abuzz with occult stories, and there was a mixture of fear and assumption that that sincere class representative was skipping school for some reason. The day ended without further incident, but the next day, things took a turn for the worse. I went to school the next day, having completely forgotten about the class representative. However, the atmosphere in the class was strange. Everyone seemed tense, with some talking in hushed tones, and others engaged in conversations wearing gloomy expressions. Some girls were even quietly crying. I asked Matsuzaka, who was already at school, if something had happened. With swollen eyes, he told me,
"The class representative seems to have passed away yesterday."
For a moment, I recalled the previous day's events and thought, wait, a curse? But the atmosphere wasn't suitable for such an insensitive remark. I asked Matsuzaka, why did he pass away? An accident?
No, I don't know the details either. I just asked a classmate when I came in this morning.
I see. It was quite shocking, but I remained relatively calm. It was sad and painful, but more than anything, I think my mind was filled with the question, why? Soon after, an emergency school assembly was held. The topic, of course, was about the class representative's death, but they didn't touch upon the reason for his death at all. The class that day was somber all day long, with the constant sound of sobbing. The lessons didn't function, alternating between self-study and moments where the teachers, overwhelmed with tears, couldn't carry on the lessons. In the homeroom at the end of the day, our absent homeroom teacher arrived. He mentioned having met the class representative's body, but avoided mentioning the cause of death. When a classmate tearfully shouted,
"Why did he have to die?"
everyone in the class burst into tears. Finally, I felt the weight of the situation, and tears wouldn't stop flowing. Our teacher, also in tears, shared,
It was suicide. A note was found.
Everyone was in such a shock that no one spoke up. Our teacher seemed like he wanted to say more but couldn't find the words. He just said,
Be careful on your way home.
and left. That day, club activities were canceled, and without talking to anyone, I quickly went home. When I got home, my mother knew about the entire incident for some reason and said, It must have been tough, comforting me. Even as a second-year high school student, I found myself crying in front of my parent. The next day, the class remained somber. In the morning homeroom, our teacher announced,
Today is the class representative's funeral. Raise your hand if you want to attend.
I thought it would be challenging for anyone to raise their hand in such a situation, but everyone in the class did. Later, we divided into several teachers' cars and attended the funeral. Tears flowed incessantly during the ceremony. But after the funeral, I felt that we had bid a proper farewell. Afterward, we returned to school and resumed our usual classes. The atmosphere remained heavy, but everyone in the class seemed to have made a switch, behaving cheerfully as if nothing happened. The class bore a significant scar, but there was a collective determination to persevere for the sake of the class representative. However, the next day, another incident occurred. The next day, I was riding my bike to school. Usually, I cross a large bridge on my way to school, but on that day there was a restriction on crossing the bridge. Numerous police cars and ambulances were parked, and there was a crowd of onlookers. Curious about what was happening, I joined the crowd and learned that a high school student had fallen from the bridge. I couldn't believe it. As I approached the scene, I saw 2 bicycles lying on the ground. In our high school, we had to attach a school-designated seal to our bikes for theft prevention. Both of these bicycles had our high school seal on them, and to my shock, the color of the seal matched the one on my bike. I remember feeling the blood drain from my face. Frightened, I hastily left the scene. When I arrived at school, the story had already spread throughout the entire school. However, no one knew who had fallen. I couldn't stand the thought of it being someone I knew well. But I spotted Hosoki and Matsuzaka. I couldn't help but feel relieved, albeit inappropriately. However, Hosoki seemed unwell, responding to any conversation with only simple nods. After that, the homeroom started as usual, but 2 students were still missing. 2 members of the baseball team hadn't shown up. Although the homeroom teacher didn't say anything, I think everyone understood. It was these 2 who had fallen off that bridge. As time passed in the heavy atmosphere, lunch break arrived. When the 4th period class ended, the homeroom teacher came in and began speaking.
I have something to tell you. I think everyone already knows, but today 2 students from our class fell from the bridge and passed away.
Some students began to cry, but most remained silent. I think everyone knew. Suddenly, the same person from the previous occult ritual conversation shouted,
It's a curse!
The homeroom teacher asked,
What do you mean?
We did a curse ritual. Me, the class representative, and 2 from the baseball team. It was the day before the class representative died. Next is definitely going to be me.
A curse? That's impossible, right?
But the ritual worked.
Hey, stop saying such insensitive things.
a girl student interjected.
Exactly. Talking about life so casually.
Another girl added.
It's a curse!
Hosoki suddenly shouted, standing up. The class fell silent for a moment.
I saw it! The 2 falling from the bridge. One stumbled and seemed to fall. The other tried to help but ended up falling together.
That's just an accident. Why would it be a curse?
I saw it. When I ran to where they fell and looked under the bridge, there was a woman there.
Huh? A woman in the river? Wow, you saw that well, didn't you?
No, it was different. She wasn't in the river. She was floating, right below the bridge. A ghost woman.
The class became quiet. The homeroom teacher, trying to regain control, said,
Don't say foolish things. There's no such thing as ghosts. Everyone go home today. Stay indoors. Absolutely do not go out.
When I got home, my mother was surprised to see me back so early. As I shared the events of the day, she advised me to take it easy and rest. As soon as I returned to my room, I called Hosoki. Summarizing his story. He was cycling behind the two baseball club members, keeping a distance. Suddenly, one of them tripped and almost fell off the bridge. The other tried to pull him back, but they both ended up falling together. In a panic, Hosoki rushed over and peered under the bridge, where he saw a woman floating just below. He then ran away from there. It was unbelievable and hard to accept. Firstly, the idea of falling off a bridge just by falling off a bicycle seemed almost impossible. At that moment, I suspected Hosoki of lying. The anger welled up as I hung up on him. Next, I called Matsuzaka. I inquired if this incident might be a curse, and he asserted that it was almost certainly a series of coincidences. He explained that the stories of a curse had spread rapidly because several people who had recently played the game like Kokuri-san had consecutively disappeared. He mentioned that the ghost Hosoki saw was probably a hallucination, reasoning that witnessing acquaintances fall from a bridge could induce such phenomena. Indeed, if I saw an acquaintance fall from a bridge right before my eyes, I probably wouldn't be able to stay calm. Thinking about it that way, I feel sorry for having been cold to Hosoki. The evening news briefly touched on the incident, mentioning an ongoing investigation into the cause. Later that night, there was a call from the school instructing us to attend as usual the next day.